Welcome to Digital Dominators, the podcast that helps small business owners grow their confidence, sharpen their digital skills, and actually enjoy showing up online. I'm Sooz Young, your host, tech coach, and digital cheerleader, and every week I chat with brilliant experts to bring you practical tips, smart strategies, and the tools and tech to make business easier. From social media marketing to websites, content to confidence, AI to automation, we're breaking it down into simple steps you can actually use. If you're ready to make things simpler and more successful in your digital world, you're in the right place. Let's get stuck in. Welcome back to Digital Dominators, the podcast where we explore the digital skills, systems, and smart strategies that help you build a brand that connects and converts. If you've ever stared at your screen thinking, what do I post today? Or wondered why your content is getting views but not sales, then this episode is for you. Because visibility without conversions, that's just noise. And today's guest is here to help you turn your content into something far more powerful, cash-generating clarity. Naomi Rose is a content marketing strategist and the founder of Naomi Rose Marketing, where she teaches business owners how to show up consistently online and create content that doesn't just attract likes, but actually brings in leads and paying clients. Her approach blends messaging clarity, AI assistant workflows, and magnetic personal branding so you can create high impact content without losing your voice or burning out. In this episode, we're talking about what content really needs to do now, how to plan content that works for your business, and how to make the most of AI without sounding like a robot. So let's get into it. Hi, how are you today?
I am really good. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And I just love Digital Dominators. I think it's a great podcast to listen to.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think I've got such an honor to be able to speak to most amazing people that are doing incredible things and they're in the digital space. And you are one of those people. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today, Naomi. How did you get into being a content marketing specialist? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's kind of been a little bit around the houses, as they say, because actually my background is in classical music. So I'm a trained classical musician. And I grew up doing orchestras, going out, performing, all of that kind of thing. And went to university, did my degree in music performance. But when I came out, I was like, I really love event planning. It was something I really enjoyed. And I'm like, I want to work behind the scenes. I want to get into the nitty gritty of what goes on really behind the scenes in the theatre, festivals, all that kind of thing. So I did a master's in arts management and went on then to work for theatre, festivals, organising events. I mean, each year there'll be like 280 events, which was insane. That varied from venue based to outdoor to community based. And the job I started with, which was paying something like, I think, 11 grand a year. I mean, the arts are notorious for not paying very much, but it was a really small amount, but I loved it. It was about being an entertainment support assistant, which was code for you do whatever is needed at the time. And I ended up kind of falling into marketing from there because mostly I was a bit tech savvy, probably more tech savvy than most people. So, I mean, I'd go and do like behind the scenes in the theatre because they would need a female to do like dressing and stuff like that for shows. But it was at the time when social media was occurring, just starting to come on the scene. I was going, you need to be doing this. And I kind of took on digital marketing from there. It kind of became my thing because I was the only one that kind of could do a little bit of basic coding using Microsoft Front Page. Do you remember that? Microsoft Front Page? It was a hideous tool. It was like Fisher Price, right? But I would be like doing the websites, I'll be doing the digital advertising, and then I was setting up the social media channels. And it kind of went from there. And a lot of it stemmed from being a musician because you get to really understand how to get what they call bums on seats. But you're working with multiple different audiences. I mean, 280 shows a year, that's a lot of different audiences, different people, different tactics that you need to really get people into the arts, which can often be tricky, but it's such a beneficial thing for everybody. That's how I kind of started. And I went into then working mostly in charity sector and corporate, leading social media team, project management teams, then digital teams, which covers, as you well know, digital seems to touch every element of the business. So it wasn't just doing the website, it was doing social at large scale. There were usually sometimes I had to do a social media account call at one point for one organization because there were so many accounts. There was 80, and websites that had like 80 to 100,000 pages wide, massive, with different platforms and all these kind of things, as well as then the content marketing side of it. So there was content marketing in there and brand and all of these elements. And it was really kind of pulling all of that together and trying to turn it into something that people on the outside world would really understand and really connect with the ideal client. Often then through the medium of what was called Twitter at that point, of 140 characters, which was tricky in itself to convey any message in that short amount of time. And that's how I kind of got into digital. But my first venture into business was actually a cafe, bar and bakery. I kind of quit my 9 to 5. Well, as you know, digital is never 9 to 5. It's kind of more like
Yeah.
24/7. And I opened my own cafe and bar, later crowdfunded the bakery. And it taught me so much about business. I hadn't got a Scooby-Doo. I honestly didn't know what I was doing. It was really winging it. I just liked to bake. And I thought, well, if I like to bake, I know enough about business strategy as well as marketing, which is really essential to any business like that. And any business full stop, because we often think it isn't, then hopefully that will carry me through. And it did for the most part. And then I had a wonderful team that was also very good at some of the other stuff. And we kind of figured it out from there. But being able to be in a venue again and see how your customers behave and how they interact, it was such an insight into how to create great content. And at the time, I didn't do that, not for that business, because I was too busy. It was more, what do I call it? Kind of post and ghost, fling and spray and play and all of those kind of things just to get stuff out there. And in the end, I was like, this isn't working for me. And I had to bring in a consultancy to work with me. And even though that I could understand it and do it, we put together some really great things. And from there, I closed the business in 23, early 23. And I thought, what am I going to do next? And actually, it was taking all of my prior knowledge and turning it into helping business owners really build content that could connect, because it's such a big gap. Because social media dominates everything. People feel that they have to be on social, and it's like this hungry monster that never stops eating, 365 bits of content we need a year. It's so not true. And I realized how much help people needed with that, particularly in the climate that we've been through in the last 3 to 4 years, where there's been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unpredictability, and really being able to allow people to be themselves a little bit more and have the confidence to do that. Because when we start putting stuff in writing, in video, it suddenly gets very real, and we can often feel really uncomfortable about that. So that's how I've kind of ended up where I am.
I absolutely love that first question, because you get to hear these incredible stories and journeys of where you've got to where you are today. And there is so much as part of where that, from a skills point of view, that you've transferred skills through every single step of your journey on the way. So you've really been part of digital and content right from its early stages back in, you're talking 20 years ago, 2007 really, for Facebook, and even before that with MySpace and things like that as well, right?
Yeah.
So you've been right in the
Yes.
spaces.
Yep.
when
Yeah.
it
I used
first
to run
came
the
out.
MySpace page. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I started that first job. It was about 2004, 2005. Facebook, pages didn't even exist at that point, let
That's
alone
right.
Instagram or anything like that. And it was really like blogging that was really cool and trendy back then, which still should be trendy and cool now. It's just that people don't feel it is. And like I say, digital banner ads and all of these kind of things. But in a way, I often kind of go back to those early years and think social media, well, before that came in, before social media came in, we had to be really quite creative in our marketing. And one thing about working, one, in the arts and secondly in the charity sector, is you don't have big budgets, which means you have to be even more creative with what you have to be able to sell tickets, to be able to build support, to be able to target your audiences. And you're having to be really smart about how you get in front of the right people in the right places, in the right context. And that can be working in partnerships. It can be doing offline. And everything that I was doing, even though I was often doing offline marketing like stunts and going out and doing crazy things like that, I would be always asking, well, how can we turn that into social content? How can we bring that back onto digital? How can we make use of this? How can we use user generated content from other people? What can we encourage other people to do that can help make more noise for us because we don't have the budget to throw out £1 million ad campaign like some organizations do. So a lot of every time I would be doing anything, it'd be like, how can we maximize this visibility? How can we make more of what we're doing? What can we turn offline to online or get people to share for us? Like, those are the days of the flash mobs. Do you remember the flash mobs? They
Hmm.
work brilliantly.
Yeah.
But that's exactly the power of user generated content. And I think we get lazy with social media. And I don't mean that because I know a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to get social media right, but it feels like the easy win. Imagine if you did a flash mob now, that would probably actually get noticed. Sometimes it's about thinking about where
Yeah.
best to go and how to attract in the right way. And it's not always just going to the easiest channel in front of you because you're there more than not.
I find that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of noise, as you said, in the online space. And you'll know this as much as I do, but that the COVID brought out a lot of experts that are not very full of experience into the online space because everybody went online and they had no choice to. It's the only way that they could connect. But what's happened is that there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. And there's a lot of strategies that are explained for especially business owners and these small business owners, charities, kind of third sectors that are looking for ways to get in front of get their business or what they do in front of other people, but then get caught up in almost ineffective strategies based upon misinformation, when really it comes down to being creative and knowing who your customers are and finding a way, as you've explained there so clearly, how to boost that visibility. Have you found something similar as that? What's your experience that you've found over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, totally. And I think one of the things that I've seen is, like you say, 2020 changed a lot of how we worked and how we saw things. And a lot of people came out and thought, I'm going to go and do this. So that misinformation and I suppose online chatter that came around, a lot of people brought into it because they wanted to believe in something. Now, people are really cautious about what they believe in. It's really changed how
Mm.
people buy online, particularly, but their buying behaviors. What needs to happen now in order to convert your clients and customers needs to be a lot more authentic, a lot more trust based, a lot more genuine. And even more so now since AI has really kind of been coming into the scenes behind the scenes that people haven't even realized over the last few years, you now need to have a completely different approach to your content in order to rebuild that trust and to show, there's so many genuine business owners out there, but we've had fingers burnt by people that aren't. And you hear the horror stories and it's frightening. And a lot of people do get that comparisonitis. And I always say to people, just because someone else is doing it, one, you don't know their bank balance. You can't see what's going on in their accounts. And two, they might not be doing it right anyway. So don't copy them because you don't know they got it right. They might be shouting the loudest in your world and that's what you see the most, but they might be wrong. And you can't assume because what people are putting online isn't actually what's going on behind closed doors, because that is very, very different. That is a very different thing that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see.
Yeah, there's this presenting yourself online compared to how we're representing our business and what we're having to do to be able to promote our business in that sort of way. And I find that there's a challenge that most businesses have is that FOMO to start off with, that fear of missing out because they're seeing what other people are doing, that they're not part of that journey, but also not really knowing how to make it work for them in some sort of way. So I think it's a difficult place for a lot of business owners to work out how to create a plan or a strategy or content or how to connect with their audience authentically. What would you suggest for businesses to start to speak authentically to their audience? What are some strategies for you?
Yeah, it's such a good point. And it is about being authentic. I think what I am seeing a lot of, certainly more so than ever, is storytelling and it's about being relatable. And actually, we don't have to tell everybody every single secret we have in the world. We always think that just because someone else is putting everything out online and showing that vulnerability and doing all of those kind of things, that you have to be doing that too. Actually, what I see is sometimes the small conversations, I call it the small talk. I'm not necessarily a fan of small talk, even though I owned a cafe. But what it did teach me is it's a really great way to engage and open up with people and build that trust and loyalty, because people want relatability. They don't buy your product because they don't think they'll get results from it. They just don't believe they will get the results from it. And that's a very different way of looking at it. It's about self-belief. It's about being attainable. And with our content, sometimes the smallest things, even like how you take your coffee, I often talk about, I put a post out on LinkedIn a few months ago about how much I paid for a cup of coffee. It was £6 and 5p. I had an oat milk flat white and I'd gone to an event and I put it out and said, would you pay that? I had over 200 comments. And you think, well, what's the point of that? Is that just not noise? But actually it got me to learn a lot about the money mindset of people that either are or aren't my ideal clients. It was a really interesting, eye-opening conversation. And that was just from, would you pay that amount of money for your coffee? Admittedly, sometimes I am paying up to £5 now as a standard because that seems to be the way it goes. I mean, at what point did it cost like over £10 for a coffee and a croissant? But that's the world that we're in. And again, they're relatable conversations. So sometimes when we are thinking about what content to start, it's thinking about what would my audience be interested in and making the story about them. But we have to start with giving them a little. It's about telling something about us that gets them to open up, like you would do if you went to an event. I think we try and overcomplicate it. It doesn't need to be that complicated as well. It's about keeping it so simple that people can really relate to it.
That's some really good advice there, because there's still this, I'm seeing this as well, and I'm sure you are too, but there's still this mindset of the business is one, but I am another. And I know Daniel Priestley talks a lot about being the key person of influence and being that person that is the go-to person in your industry for what you do. And I know that I've been working on that as a business over this last kind of year, but there's a big challenge I find, and you'll see this in the corporate world more rather than the solo entrepreneur world, that being online, being this persona might not be who you truly are or want to be online, but it's almost like playing a game in some sort of way as well. How do you encourage your clients to show up authentically in their own personal brand or their business? What advice would you give them?
I think it's literally like I was saying, just start with small stuff, like even if it's showing a picture of where you work, like that is a little window into your world. Everyone loves behind the scenes stuff. But what it does is by doing little small things that gets people to know who you are, because people buy from people and they're not interested in polished content. If you're doing perfect content, you're going to get scrolled past. Unfortunately, I love Canva. I use Canva all the time. But if it's too perfect, people don't believe it because perfect isn't real and certainly not attainable to anybody. So they want to see the real you. They want to see that they can believe what you're saying and build that trust. So if you are really struggling to be authentic online, and I'll put my hands up and say I've been there. I've hidden behind brands until about 18 months ago where I had to be myself. Even my cafe and bar was named after my grandmother. So I had already created another persona that wasn't me that I could hide behind. But it was that story I told all the time about the reason why I started the cafe and bar. That was really, really powerful. But it is about just starting small and building confidence. We're not expecting you to do a live on Instagram and start sharing everything that's going on in your world and being really emotionally vulnerable. Small steps so people can see who you are. A cup of coffee on a Monday, a walk that you're doing, something that you love, a hobby, something that gets I often talk about, I was going to say a bee in your bonnet. I am actually a beekeeper and I often share stories about what happens with my bees. I've had bees for about 4 years now and I learn something new every time. They are incredible. But people now come to me and ask me bee-related questions. So, my husband has so much more knowledge on me when it comes to beekeeping. He's the one on YouTube doing all the things. I just turn up and go, have we got honey today? And just sit and be with them, literally. But again, sometimes just sharing those little moments really helps. And being okay to share the stuff that doesn't work as well. I think we feel scared to show that we're failing or we've not done something perfectly. But again, people don't believe perfect. People believe what's real. They want to see behind the scenes. And I still, even now, watch a lot of cooking, baking shows, professional level. You watch the professional chefs, they make mistakes all the time. There is never a cook or a competition that they're in where something doesn't go wrong. And we feel guilty for sharing that online because we don't want to seem unprofessional. It's not, it's reality, and people want that now. So always just start small and try a little bit more.
As a creator, I used to spend hours re-recording voiceovers to get the perfect tone. But finding reliable voice talent, booking studio time, and editing takes forever, and it can break the bank. That's why I recommend 11 Labs. It generates ultra-realistic AI voices and even clones your own, all in seconds. With natural-sounding speech, multilingual support, and seamless text-to-speech conversion, 11 Labs powers podcasts, audiobooks, training modules, and more. No mic required. Ready to level up your audio? Try it free today at allmylink.me/TC11labs and bring your scripts to life with 11 Labs.
And remember, I always go back to what you share is about your ideal clients. We need to build that connection. And the quickest way to do that is by giving a little bit about who you are and what you like, what you don't like, things you gets on your nerves. It's not necessarily about annoying people, right? We don't have to be that really opinionated person that gets on everybody's nerves, but just talk about something that you care about, something you're passionate about, and people will start to really connect with that.
There's quite a lot of polarizing content being produced at the moment, and that's because of what's happened in the world over the last year. And it's kind of I've lost my word, but it's liking that content more, and it's pushing that content a little bit more. So I feel that some business owners and individuals are creating polarizing content in order to get that kind of clickbait engagement throughout their posts. Now, I'm seeing this differently across the different platforms as well than how people are interacting across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as the main kind of B2B platforms in that way. And is it working? Is it working with what the platforms want then? Or is it still being authentic to yourself? What are you suggesting to your clients around this in this kind of difficult stage? Because it's so different than how we used to use social media. And we're not seeing any of our friends or family anymore on the platforms. We're being inundated with ads. That's okay. That's how the platforms work. And we've got to play the game on the platforms, do what we get to do on these tools. We use them for free to promote our businesses. We've got to play the game. But when it comes to like being your authentic self and wanting to be visible and create your brand, but then having to create polarizing content to work with the platform, there's a real difficulty there around, am I being my authentic self? But then the platforms wanting this authenticity. How are you navigating that? And what are you recommending to your clients in this kind of, because it might be different in a couple of years' time. Probably will be.
Totally.
But what would you recommend just now?
Yeah, it's hard, but I think for me, and this is what I always say to everyone, it's about your clients, and they would rather see you being authentic. And there are ways of kind of thinking about how people consume media. I always say, look, think about how they're actually using it. Are they looking on a desktop or are they looking on their phone? Like, if you think about how, and I always say, go and do your own doom scrolling, like on all of the platforms that you think your ideal clients are, and just see what stands out to you, what catches your eye. And you'll see, like on LinkedIn, you'll go through and you'll see the same formulas of content, but it doesn't make you stop. It doesn't make you stop and take note. You'll stop and take note when there's someone that you actually really trust and like doing something, or you'll stop when something is different. So I post a lot about playing in orchestras on LinkedIn, like a lot of the time, because people are bored of seeing the same formula content about, is your content not converting? I'm a content strategist and I do that. No, it's boring. No one cares. I'm sorry, but it is generally like that. And like on Instagram, if you go through that, and I get my clients to do this, like go doom scroll, observe your own behaviors and what's affecting you, because you'll probably see very similar things when it comes to how your clients or potential customers will engage with you. You can use some of the ways. Like, a lot of people say video content works much better on Instagram. For me, it's carousels. My
Yeah.
clients like the carousels, and it's finding what works for your clients the best. And Facebook, for me, I put a bit of stuff to do with business. Generally, I don't. It's not where my audience are the majority of the
Hmm.
time. So I don't do it. But again, I might do something slightly different and slightly more ad hoc on Facebook. So we can kind of take some of the things that we can learn from other people, but don't use them as gospel, because you're more
Yeah.
likely to stop for someone who's being themselves than you are for someone that you think they're trying to use shock tactics. Or you might stop and pause, but you'll question how genuine that content is. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's really just finding what works for your ideal client. Test, learn, look at the data. Numbers don't lie. We have to get into the data, right? As
Hmm.
much as I like being creative, numbers are really, really important, and see what works and double down on the stuff that really does work. And like I say, tell those stories. Tell people a little bit about yourself. What's your why? An unusual fact, something you do, milk before tea do you put your milk in first, or whatever it is, because that gets a conversation going, right?
Yeah.
Weird things that happen to you that day. All that stuff starts conversations and genuine conversations. I always say, you have a look at my content. Everything I do is with purpose. It always has a purpose, even if it's not talking about content marketing. People get bored if I just talked about content all the time, but actually people buy from me because of me, not because of what I'm always talking about. And those connections are super important. So that would be how I approach it. Just kind of think about how you're going to grab people's attention and work to that advantage.
And make the people right to your people. Exactly. Like it's your people that you're speaking to. So speak authentically to them, right? Okay, I love that. So
Totally.
just keep it super simple. Be your authentic self and really work with the platforms and look at your data to see how that kind of navigates.
Yeah.
It's all kind of what we talk about in our kind of digital mindset. 'Cause I absolutely love that. I've been reading a little bit recently around how-to content not really working as well on the platform, because with AI, we're getting quite a lot of how-tos from the platform, from the tools. So if we're putting out how-to content, and again, it's going along with this kind of strategy stuff that we've talked a little bit about as well. So if how-to content isn't the way to go, what other type of content, or if we're using AI to create content, that's maybe two questions in one. What kind of content is kind of working at the moment? Do you think? You said carousels are working for you on Instagram. I know though, for myself, it tells me that face photos work well for me. And I'm like, oh, unusual, because I create video content. So it's interesting to see what the data's playing with. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, how to's is a really interesting one, because if you think about people, what they want, your clients want. They want the answers quickly, easily, and simply. And they actually don't necessarily want to have to figure out how to do it, right? They just want the
Hmm.
results. They want the transformation. They want the outcomes. So the stuff that really works at the moment is what we call the social proof, the stuff that shows what you can do. So that could be talking about your own experiences, your own ways that you've gone about things, and showing the evidence behind that. It could be a client that's gone through a similar thing and seeing their journey from start to finish that people can relate to. It needs to be relatable. They need to be able to see themselves in that. And like I say, telling those stories, being really genuine, being really open, that's the kind of content that is going to really work right now, not the how-tos. There is so much information out there. I read a stat not so long ago that we scroll through over 300 foot on average of content a day. That's higher than
It's
Big
cool.
Ben. You think, gosh, if you're scrolling through that much content, no one's going to take in a how to or remember it anymore. But they'll remember a story. They'll remember something that makes them feel something or gives them that
Hmm.
experience. I often talk about, in a lot of what I do, about emotions and the power of emotions, because a lot of our buying decisions are made based subconsciously on emotions, but we back it up with logic because we need to feel like we're justifying it. And so when it comes to thinking about the how to's and all of that kind of thing on social and in other mediums, that's why it's not resonating, because people can't connect with it. It's practical, but actually people need to feel something. They need to feel like a connection, or kind of go, that's me. they get me, they understand me, they see where I am. And we often talk about we need to talk to the pain points. Actually, we don't. We need to talk to the symptoms, because no one goes to the doctor saying, I've got I'm just trying to think, an inner ear infection or whatever the scientific name is. They go in and go, I've got an ear pain. And we take it too far down the line. People can't necessarily see that problem because they don't know what it is. If you don't know, you don't know, right? So we need to talk to the symptoms much more, exactly the actions and behaviors people are taking, so that we can really make that relate. Now, when it comes to the world of AI, because I use AI every day, and it's such a brilliant tool, but you can spot it a mile away when people are creating content with it. And you can use it to create content. You just have to do it in the right way.
Yeah.
And for like with AI, if you're putting content out there that is solely created with AI, you will lose visibility. You won't get picked up in searches. It won't be, the algorithms spot it. They can see it because they're that intelligent. They're much more intelligent than what we can always see some of the time because of the speed they can work at. So you can use AI to really teach whatever tool you use, to teach it about your ideal clients, like really get under the, I'm not just talking about business owner in their mid-50s struggling and overwhelmed. We're talking about the emotions, the everyday life. What are their life priorities? Not just about what they do in their business, because that's how we can really connect. So we can teach it and teach it our tone of voice, teach it all of the things that we need it to know, and use it as a tool that can help us plan, that can give us ideas, and we can tweak and edit before the final draft goes out, because it can take a lot of the legwork and also repurpose. Because one of the biggest myths is that you need lots of different types of content. You need to tell lots of different types of stories. It's the absolute wrong strategy. And I often say content should absolutely be boring. It should be repetitive. Coca-Cola are repetitive, right? They say, talk about Coca-Cola all the time, and have done for years and years and years and years. And we don't get sick of that. But we feel like we need to tell so many different things. Actually, keep it dead simple. Keep it really talking about the same things over and over again in order to really build that messaging, build that reputation, and repetition builds reputation, which gets you seen in the long run. So that's how we can really use AI to help us make content quicker and still keep it authentic.
I love that, because I think it then goes back to that kind of strategy stuff that we were talking about, how people are so hooked on like, what's the next thing? How do we do this? Like catching on the next trend that's out there. But actually we're habitual creatures. Like we like things to happen in a routine in some sort of order. We're still got that like reading a newspaper or having an article or that TV show coming on at that time, or like still structuring our lives in some sort of way, because it's part of what makes ourselves, right? That makeup of being habitual. And so people would want that with their content, because again, we have no control over how the content is put in front of our ideal audience. So if they know what they're going to get from us when we're posting it, doesn't really matter how or when we're posting it. Yes, of course, use the data that's come the platform's telling us, but we've got no control over it in any way. So be consistent with what you're creating, right? And then you're saying use AI to be able to do it. So how do you do that? Is it part of, because you've got an AI content plan, don't you, or something like that? Tell us a little bit more about that. What are your strategies, Naomi?
Yeah, well, like I say, for me, it's about saving time where we can. So planning is a big one, right? Thinking, oh gosh, I've got to plan my socials. Like, let's say we're going into the next month right now. I've got 31 days of content I need to produce if I'm going to be consistently visible all the time. One, it's not about posting every single day. It's about being realistic on what you can do with the time, but doing it consistently is important, because doing 5 days and then doing nothing for a month will not help you in any way, shape or form. But it's about really being able to know your ideal clients, being able to talk about the key themes. And I do this and I say to people, right, instead of thinking that you need 30 days of content, think you need 4 weeks. Think of it in weeks. So if I said you only need 4 different things to talk about for the next month, how does that make you feel? That's not too bad. Right.
It
Okay.
takes that pressure off, doesn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So I said, right. And this is exactly how I plan. I have a structure to my week. Like I know my podcasts go out on a Tuesday, my blog goes out on a Sunday. I know exactly when I'm going to be, my LinkedIn newsletter goes out on a Wednesday, and I keep it really structured because I can't have that. I don't have capacity to think about every single day of the week. And each day has like a different post going out on different social channels. And I take one topic per week and split it into different formats, different ways. It goes into my email, it goes into my membership. It does all of these things. And I'm not having to really think about it. So that's where the AI content planner can really come in, because you can kind of go, okay, right, if you know you've got a launch coming up, or you know you're pushing one particular product that month, then you can think, what stories can I tell? What themes can I bring out? What can I do that can really help people right now? And how can I make it a multiply? Have one bit of content that can be multiplied. And once you've got like 4 ideas and you've got a handful of different ways of producing it, which AI can help with and help you kind of build those stories, like voice noting it, give it your ramblings, like tell them little inklings about yourself, because that helps. And keep telling it your tone of voice. But in the kind of AI planner and what I teach, I often give people the prompts that they can use where they can fill in the details about themselves, and it will come up with stuff. And I did it recently in a challenge where I did the AI to Authentic challenge, and it was really, really eye-opening. And we had a lot of fun with that, because you could also use AI for fun as well as like doing business stuff. But it was like, if your business was a superhero, what would it be? And these were the questions that I'd get people in the challenge to do. Partly, one, because it was fun and everyone wanted to know what kind of superhero they would be, but also because it would clarify whether you were telling AI the right things, whether you'd really nailed your ideal client, and whether you'd given it the right information that understood you and who you were as a business owner. Because if it was wrong, you know you've not given it the right information. So that's how we can really start to test and understand how to use it. The AI kind of content planner helps make life easier. It takes the legwork out of all of that content and working to our advantage rather than making us feel like it's another overwhelming thing that we need to be doing. It's a lot, like managing a business and then thinking you got to do your marketing on top of that. And what usually doesn't, what people give up is the marketing, which is such an
Yeah.
essential part of business. It's like one of the most important parts. It's always the marketing budget that wants to go first. It should be the last thing to go, because it's the bit that will help you get the visibility and sales. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like, we have to be clever and use our time in a really wise way in order to make sure that we're being consistent, we're focusing in the right places, and actually using the tools that we've got at our fingertips to our advantage, so that we can do more things to get more visibility. We can then go out more and do more of the outreach, because that is really where you're going to start seeing the results in your business, is
Mhm.
when we're going out to where our ideal clients are, rather than sticking to our own channels all the time. What our own channels do is build that reputation, build that trust, build that visibility in a really steady way. But it also shows, by being consistent, you're reliable, you're trustworthy, you're going to show up for the people that you want to work with. And that is really important.
Yeah, really, really important. I like to think that marketing should be around that kind of 30% of your business. And people don't realize that actually, if I was to structure that in my day, that's at least 2 hours a day. So if I'm putting it over a week, that's like maybe a day a week, day and a bit a week I'm going to spend on marketing. Now, that's across all of your channels and all of your strategies, but it's about using that as a mindset of a target to go, well, how is that broken down even further? What is the content that needs to go out for that? What platforms and channels? What am I promoting? How am I speaking? What is that made up of? Is it videos? Is it blog posts? Is it all of this? What is the goal that I'm trying to meet as part of it? So when you break it down into that kind of chunk, and it's not, if you're not doing 30% and you're not making sales, then there's something wrong there, right? So when you talk about like creating content, excuse me, that turns into cash conversion, what does that mean for you? How do you convert content into cash conversions? Not physical cash, but you know what I mean?
Well, that would be
Into
lovely though, wouldn't
content.
it? You know, I mean, back in the days of the cafe, used to have a lot of people that would pay in cash. And when I did the crowdfunding for the bakery, and crowdfunding is generally has to be done online, and I had people literally trying to give me cash to put towards a crowdfunding, and I'd be like, I can't actually legally take this from you, but they're like, we don't online shop. Okay, right, we'll figure something out. But yeah, sometimes it was the way it works. But when it comes to creating content that converts into cash and actually really is thinking about how we can develop a strategy, it's about thinking about who our ideal clients are and how they buy a little bit. We have to get into understanding how our ideal clients buy, what their behaviors are, and what we can really do to convert them. So sometimes I'll talk about like content alone isn't going to get you sales, right? It's not always going to get you sales, because sometimes, and this totally depends on your ideal clients, it's that outreach that might work. It might be going to that event that might work. It might be having a book that people buy first. It could be a really low barrier to entry. It could be because you've worked or collaborated with someone else. So it's really thinking about what are those stages that people would go through before they buy from you in terms of your content. And when it comes to buying, there's 5 stages in the emotional journey, for want of a better word. But the first one is understanding there's a problem. So if they don't understand there's a problem, they're not going to buy. They're not going to see that. That's why we need to talk to the symptoms in our content. But then the second stage is info search. So once they've realized they've got that problem, they're now going to find out more about it and what's the solution. And again, our content can help with that. It can really help convince people that you are the best solution. The third stage is like the evaluating alternatives. So this is where we see if we can find something better or more suitable or a better price or something that will get us different results. And again, this is where we deal with the thinking of what are the objections? Why are people not going to buy from us? And then the fourth stage will be around purchasing. So that will be around the buying. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to buy. If it's complicated, they won't. If it's too hard, they won't. And I mean, when I say too hard, if they've got to pick up a phone and make a payment, that will be a barrier. Like I won't go to a restaurant if I can't book online. Simple. They've lost me at that point. They've really lost me. So again, we make that journey easy. And that could be when you're thinking about your content, you could be sharing all of these things first, but actually, like I've done masterclasses where I've reached out to people and gone, I think this will be really good for you. Do you want to come? Okay, give me your email address. I'll sign you up. I take the stress of having to fill out a form. That's how capacity we have for actually doing stuff, because it's not a priority to us. Your business is not a priority to your ideal clients. It's only a priority to you. So that's what we have to remember. And then the fifth and final stage is that kind of post-buyer purchase, which is the buyer's remorse. This is where we convince and remind people, not convince, that's the wrong word, but remind people why they've brought it and feel really good about that purchase, because no one wants a refund. It happens. Sometimes we do buy stuff and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't the right decision. And that's where we convince people. So when it comes to thinking about turning content into cash, we have to really understand all of those stages and how people are feeling and how people buy. Like they're probably not going to find you from your own social media channels first, because people will probably find you through Google, through word of mouth, through an event, through networking, through listening to a podcast that you're guesting on, any of these things, and then they will come into your world from there. So it's really understanding those different stages and making sure it's really clear in terms of calls to action. So what do you want people to do next with your content? What is it that you're asking them to do next? Because they're not going to guess. So you have to give them that really clear direction when you're sharing stuff as to what you want people to do. And if they are people that would say, look at a post and you know they would be your ideal client, but they might be too afraid. And I'm not meaning that in a really bad way. I mean that they don't believe that they're going to get the results. By you making that personal outreach to them and going, hey, I think this is going to be brilliant for you because this is what you'll get by the end of it. That can make people feel really good about themselves, that they're being seen and heard, which is what we all want. So content is often like a way of getting attention, but we need to be really clear on what those calls to action are and how people are going to buy from us. And that's how we really create content that turns into cash.
I think you've addressed a point there that don't think anybody talks about, is really understanding how your customer makes purchases and what's going to convince them to be able to make that convince, is that the right word to use? No, probably not. But what's going to help them to be able to make the decision to invest in some sort of way? Are you seeing this as well, that there's this lack of investment for B2B businesses, or people are wary around where they're spending their money at the moment? Or is there, I call it a freeonomy culture. We have a really big freeonomy culture here in the west of Scotland, where everybody gives things away for free, and everybody signs up for everything for free, but they don't show up and they don't take action. So we have a challenge around that convincing and converting piece here, because everybody has high expectations, but then they don't take action. So there's that bridging the gap here as well. So that's understanding. It's different in the east. It's massively different, and it's massively different in the south. It's a pure west of Scotland thing. In that way, it's really fascinating. But in what you were talking about there around that convincing, not word, but investment piece, right? How do we get people to invest? How do we change their mindsets around that?
Yeah. And that's going back to that very first point that we started with, is around how many people got fingers burnt because everyone went online and became an expert, and people went, buy my course. I've got this course. And people went, yeah, I'm going to buy your course. It's going to be the brilliant answer to all my problems. And then realized it wasn't, because actually, unfortunately, you still have to do some of the work yourself. And now people are much more wary. They're much more skeptical, is probably not the right word, but again, is that belief. They don't believe that they're going to get the results because they've been overpromised and underdelivered so many times, that they've been given false information, that they've tried stuff that hasn't worked because it was wrong. So when it comes to really thinking about how do you show that what you've got to offer will get the results that people want, and you actually genuinely care, it's going back to that social proof element, really showing that transformation in people you've worked with that are like them, that they can see the evidence. People are wanting the evidence. And this again goes back to going behind the scenes and showing the stuff that does and doesn't work, showing that you listen, showing that you have, like, you know, I've launched a new course recently, and as I've worked through that course and I've listened to some of the feedback, I'm thinking, actually, how I thought it should be delivered, maybe I need to change things around, because that will make people have a better experience. You know, they're getting a bit overwhelmed at the moment. And I'm like, actually, if I'd done that a bit earlier, that would have probably stopped that. So I've shared that with them and like, right, this is what I'd probably do next time. And that's okay, because you're learning and listening, and people like to feel heard and that they've made a difference. So in terms of our content, it's really about being open, being honest, and being transparent about how we do stuff and why we're doing stuff, as well as showing those transformations that we get for people, those results that we actually get for people, without inflating the success, because there's been so much inflation in the terms of success, and you see it in like PR headlines and things like that. But actually, it's about telling the stories in a way that really resonates, that feels relatable. And I often say, going back to the attainable point, I often say, if I told you I can make you £1 million in 5 days, would you believe me? You'd probably go, no, I don't think I could do that. But if I said, if you could make 500, would you? You go, yeah, actually, I think I could. So again, it's about really thinking about how we make sure we're turning up genuine and understanding, like you say, your ideal clients and their behaviors of, like you're saying, different cultures, different areas, different ways of working. And I do a lot of talking to people before I actually work with them. Sometimes, and also this is one thing that a lot of people forget, is people aren't going to see a bit of content and immediately buy. It takes a lot
It's a
longer.
long
And
game.
it is really a long game. I have people that sometimes might take 3 months, some people that might take a year before they actually buy
That's quite
anything
good.
from me.
My
Yeah.
journey is like 6-7 years. Like, I have people coming back now from early days that are taking action. I know we've had COVID and things like that in between, but it's a long journey. It's a long game, and it's people seeing that you're still there, you're still doing what you're doing, and you're still helping people and making an impact. I found that's working well for us at the moment, but it's not immediate. It's never immediate. And when people tell you it is, that's not the case. It's wrong.
No. And I often say, like, in the first year of having the cafe, bar and bakery, well, I actually had the cafe and bar to start with, I made a loss, and I planned to make a loss. It was absolutely what I was expecting, because if I could turn a profit in year one of owning a hospitality business, I'd be doing amazingly well. It weren't going to happen. I mean, I wasn't far off, like breaking even, but I expected that. But yeah, in the online space, we expect that we don't need any budget to start off and be able to turn a profit straight away. That's unrealistic. Like some people do, and kudos to them for doing that. But the reality is it doesn't work like that. If you've got very little money to invest, it's going to take you longer. And success is something that takes consistency.
Yeah.
It gets boring. You get tired of saying the same thing over and over again, but it works.
It does. It does work. As somebody that had to be invisible for a while I was going through a bit of a health journey, turning on the visibility piece to go straight back into going, why are people not buying? This is really strange. Thinking it would be like this, totally wasn't. Had to start almost again, building the audience, building the engagement, and building the visibility again. It does, but it's faster. The second time round for me, it was faster. It was really quick, but it is a long game. It's about changing that mindset into, actually, I've got to think about the future. I've got to think about what I'm doing now to be able to help those conversions later on, I'm finding as well. So a lot of what we're talking about is relationship building as well, isn't it? So
Totally.
how do we use AI as a relationship builder through the content that we're creating for our business? I don't know if we've addressed this already, but I think it leads into this kind of content calendar that you've got for people as well. Tell us a little bit more about what you would recommend here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for relationship builders, this is where, in a way, I call AI could be your rubber ducks. You know, when you need to just get some ideas out and you just need someone to sit there and you just talk at them. This is where AI can help. You can tell them a bit about your clients, tell them some of your stories and help it come up with some ideas for you. Like if I need like content prompts for my membership, I might go, right, I need a month's worth of content prompts. Give me some ideas. And it will come up with loads. Some of them aren't any good and I can tweak them from there and teach it. But this is where we can really help using AI to build relationships and you learn things. It's important to take the language that your ideal clients use and use that, because if you talk in jargon and they don't understand it, they're going to scroll right past. So we can share some of the things that they say to us in their words. It's not about dumbing down. We always think that we're going to dumb down by doing that. We're not. We're making it accessible and easy for people to understand. And I learned this back in one of my jobs working in the charity sector, where I was working with really high level scientists and I had to put stuff onto Twitter that would convince people to just come and visit and be out in nature. And it was hard. It wasn't easy and they wouldn't get it because they'll be like, but you can't cut all of that out. I'm like, but I don't understand what you're talking about and I don't need to. What I need to be able to do is translate it.
Yeah.
So this is where, again, AI can help. It can give you lots of ideas about how you can really connect with those ideal clients and challenge it. Like, don't be afraid to challenge AI if you don't think it's right. You know better than AI of who your clients are. But this is where the planner can really help because it takes a lot of that stress out. You can actually start to think, okay, how can I plan my content so it's easier for me, but still gets the right messages across in a way that my clients will understand
That's
and
really,
build those
really,
relationships.
yeah, that's really, really, really useful because it's all about context, really. And it's AI doesn't know context unless you're sharing it, unless you're giving it that data to kind of work with. So yes, it's got knowledge, it's got background information, it's got high IQ, but it doesn't have context. And that's where you sit as the human. Be the human in the world of AI and the more that you give it. So for those of you that are looking for Naomi's content planner, 30-day AI content planner, it is go.naomirose.co/AI content planner. It'll be in the show notes. It'll be in the comments below. Go and check that out. It's completely free. Now, before we finish up today, what are some 3 tips that you can share with all of our listeners or watchers into creating content that converts?
Remember, it's all about your ideal clients. So it's not about you, it's about them. They are absolutely key to your success. So share the things that are going to connect, not the ones that you want to tell. It's all about them. The second thing is create a simple structure that works for you, that you can stay consistent. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but if you've got structure, you're more likely to stick to it. Like you said, we're creatures of habit. If we can do things on repeat, it makes our lives easier and people know what to expect from us, which is also really important. And the third thing is repetition. content should be boring. You need to be saying the same things over and over and over and over again. People don't see it if you only put it out there once. You need to be consistent with the same things that you're talking about. And that will take a lot of the legwork out of how much content you create. So keep to like being consistent but repetitive. Think about your ideal clients and keep it simple for you, because you're more likely to show up in the right spaces.
I love you've simplified that process completely, and it's going to help people so much by just taking that pressure off, right? Taking the pressure off of visibility. Everyone's like, I need to be visible, I need to put content out there. Just take that pressure off.
Yeah, totally.
By just being consistent, knowing your customer and having a strategy around what you're putting out. Amazing. Thank you so much for a great conversation today. I really enjoyed it, and you've given so much information for people to take away. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, everyone, go and check out the 30-day AI content planner, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Digital Dominators. I hope today's episode gave you something practical, or at least a bit of a boost to keep things going in this mad digital world. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. There's loads more good stuff on the way and some brilliant guests lined up too. And if you fancy going a bit deeper, come and join the Digital Dominators community. It's totally free, and it's where I share bonus trainings, podcast extras, and tools to help you build confidence with your digital skills. You'll also get access to my social media prompt calendar, so you can finally stop staring at that blank screen wondering what to post. Just head to technologycoachingonline.com/digital dominators to get started. Alright, that's it from me just now. Stay curious, keep showing up, and I'll catch you in the next one.